Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. This is episode number 193.
193.
Yeah, and this is the podcast where we chase the truth wherever it runs, and we're glad that you guys are joining with us. We're going to pick up on a couple of sermons that we just delivered over the last 2 weeks, and Brent's back. We're all back. We're ready to do this. And so we're going to be diving in and kind of following those truths, looking at what's going on. And we come from a church called Olive Branch Community Church. If you're a part of us, we love you guys. We're glad you're joining with us. For those of you who are new to the podcast, my name is Greg Harris. I'm the senior pastor at Olive Branch, and we're just glad you're joining with us.
Yeah, I'm Theressa Harris, and we would love to hear from you. So if you have any questions or comments, send them to rabbittrail@obcc.church.
And I am Brent Branchard. I'm the Connections Pastor here at Olive Branch Church. And again, whatever platform you listen to or watch on, please subscribe to that. Click the bell so that you're alerted for every new episode. And don't forget to share it with your friends. So just help us out. And let's get on with this. So people, what have you been up to over the last 2 weeks? Sorry we didn't have an episode last week, but everybody was running in different directions. So
yeah. Well, so we've had a crazy couple months, actually, and we had family in. My daughter's been traveling all over the world, and we just last night sent off 2 of our sons to Thailand. They were supposed to leave tonight, and we get a call. I think it was like 4 o'clock.
And that wasn't like a child trafficking thing.
No.
That was strictly you sent them on a missions trip. Just want to clarify that. I don't. That's horrible.
Only you, Brent. Only you.
I know.
So they were supposed to leave tonight, and we get a call that there's a typhoon in Taiwan. So they have to either leave in like 4 days or last night. So they literally had like 5 hours to pack and get to the airport. And so I was super impressed. Felicia was amazing, and so was David, and all the team. They all made it, and they got on the plane. Super flexible.
Now, I would imagine that'd be a lot easier for teenage boys because you just read one pair of underwear and one pair of Levi's, and you're good to go for the 2 weeks you're going to be gone.
Not ours. My gosh.
No way.
Yeah, no.
In fact, they couldn't even do a check-on because normally the way we like to travel is we just travel overseas with a carry-on.
Yeah, carry-on.
And but your carry-on has to be less than 15 pounds, and theirs was 25.
So super not capable.
So I'm like, well, then you have to check it.
Yeah. Well, good for them.
Yeah, and I've been obsessed with AI music, so Suno, and so I like writing music. You know that. Maybe everybody doesn't. So been playing around with it, and so you get stuff like this. Love it.
Wow.
Anyway,
Now, how does that work? You write it and you put the lyrics to it, and then you put it into AI, and they bring all the other instruments.
Yeah, totally. So
So it's his music.
It's my music.
It's his words.
Play on my guitar, my words, all that, and you put it in, and it does more like the accompaniment. You tell it what you want. So this one, when I worked with David, and he's like, "Oh, try this particular kind of reggae / sound with," and it just made the song like pop, and I'm like, "That's amazing." My other stuff's all country, so.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And you can like it on.
No, we haven't done that yet. I'll let you know. No.
All right, that's cool.
How about you, Brent?
For me, over the
More
last
grandkids.
2 weeks, yes, we went to Washington and took the grandkids back home. We stayed with them for a week while their parents were gallivanting around Norway and Iceland. And so we went out there. They were supposed to meet us like Tuesday, and then they decided they were going to jaunt over to Iceland.
How do I get babysitters like you?
I know.
I don't know.
We don't need them anymore.
Yeah.
Oh.
We're past that phase.
I would say.
Wait, we're going to be them. What?
So I've been with them, although I was at work, but we've had them for 5 weeks, considering the 4 weeks they were at our house and the week there. Nancy was with them for a couple weeks earlier. So Nancy was with them for 2 months every single day, right?
At what point do you become the parents?
I know. And I enjoyed them, and it wasn't like, oh, I can't wait to get rid of these kids and go home. But we're driving home from the airport at 1 o'clock in the morning after we dropped them off and we're on our way home. And then she's like, oh, I missed them already. And I'm like, okay, that's over the line. You know? That's over the line. We just left them, okay, 3 hours ago. You can't miss them already after being with them for 2 months. You know, so... But no, it was a great time.
I can hear her saying it.
I will say those kids, they love hot dogs. And so I've had my fill of hot dogs almost. I had my fill of hot dogs out last night.
Wait, you didn't get your own
Last
food?
night we were doing the family fun week,
Yeah.
right? And I heard something about pulled pork sandwiches, and I was like, ooh, I'll just stay here and eat pulled pork sandwiches.
Nope.
They did hot dogs.
Hot
I was
dogs.
like, okay, I'm over hot dogs. I'm going to leave. But today being Thursday, July 9th, one of the most glorious things have happened in Corona, and Wiener Schnitzel opened, and this morning I was going for lunch and went, oh, they're open. So I had chili dogs. And
Wait. Did you eat hot dogs last night?
No.
Okay, I thought you told me you were gonna go out. Okay.
Yeah, I did. I went out for tacos last night.
Okay.
But
You went over hot dogs.
But after I said I was tired of hot dogs, Wiener Schnitzel opened, and I got two
so
chili
happy.
dogs. I love them.
Were they amazing? I don't think I've ever had a Wiener Schnitzel hot dog.
Oh my gosh! I mean, hot dogs are hot dogs, right?
Yeah,
Their
but it's
chili
amazing.
dogs are pretty good.
Brent's now going to lead you into a new world of food.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Speaking of leadership,
I will. Yes. Speaking of leadership.
make that transition. All right.
All right. So again, the series is called
Take the promise.
Take the Promise, and then this one was Take the Lead. So I always your first sermon was Take the Promise.
Right.
So to me, that's a sermon title.
Sort of like an album, musical album, where the lead track is the name of the album. That's the kind of concept we're going for here.
So this one was Take the Promise, because that's the series. Take the Promise, Take the Lead. Okay, and then we're also going to cover Take the Risk. So we're going to cover those two sermons. And so just getting into it, and again, if we're in the book of Joshua, we're going through the book of Joshua, and these were pretty much chapter 1, verses 1 through 18, if you wanted to follow along. But one of the things you talked about to start it out with, and we got into a little bit when it was just me and you on the last on the last podcast, was leadership and coming in behind another leader. So you mentioned re-leadering. And sometimes the people want the old leaders. We talked about loyalty to the previous leader and familiarity of the previous leader. And people hate change, which makes re-leadering difficult.
Some people hate change.
Some people. So again, talking to, and I'll talk about it because I used to manage restaurants, and so, you take over for other managers. But, discuss some of the thoughts that you had, the plans that you had of how you were going to win the hearts of the people and creating your own culture amongst the old culture. And maybe even like, how did you lean on some strong leaders to help you formulate that transition?
We were talking about back when I moved from youth into, I mean, the better one was when I moved into the youth ministry. And so there was a previous youth guy, and there had been a pretty robust kind of like environment that they had created. And then they had all been, like, the leaders had all been excused and nothing was happening, and it had all changed. So when I came back in, I think that was my best re-leadering moment, because I was able to come in and go, like, I've been given some good advice, like, don't start anything new. Just pick up everything that they did in the past and do it. So I called all the old leaders back. And then you guys jumped in. You were added into that. So it was Karen and Roger. And from there, I asked them, like, what did you guys used to do? And you almost watched them all spark. Like, what? We're going to get to do our things again. And I just kind of endorsed what they were doing. And I added in kind of my Biola stuff. And then we would do tweaks. And slowly, after we kind of got the rhythm down after 2 years, I think it was because the team was so motivated to do what they used to do it with a different kind of teaching, and then we added onto that layering, and then eventually added stuff they never thought they could do, like the think tanks and stuff, which was like I took my bachelor's degree and kind of turned it into high school level, junior high level classes, and you guys taught curriculums and classes, so it was fun. They got to pick where they wanted to go. It gave them kind of like a university feel instead of like, hey, another sermon and you didn't get to pick what you wanted to learn. So I thought that was that was something like we got to. But I think that was because that moment of leadering was like, I know better than to just change everything. I think it was very different when it came to the second transition.
Yeah, and I think that you really leaned on Karen and Nancy like a lot, and I think that they were willing to help you, having like a strong person that
executive kind of leader,
executes,
But she never knocked vision. She was always like, no, this is awesome. We can do that. Oh, we can do that. And so I think that was the secret sauce of back when I was in youth ministry. And so it's been a wrestling match a little bit, because sometimes being visionary, you come in and people want the old vision, or the vision wasn't clear.
Actually, when you first took over, somebody from the church came up to me and said, Sharon Riddle, she's amazing. And, just started like laying out everything who she was and said, those are big shoes to fill. Don't even try. I was like, thanks for the pep talk.
Yeah. So
it's a great experience.
She was amazing. Don't try to be amazing.
Yeah, basically.
All right.
Don't try to
and
be
I
like
was
you
snarky,
can't.
so I said, I have no desire to be Sharon Riddle. So we're good.
Yeah. And that,
Not because I didn't like her, but I'm just very different. So, and I knew that.
But we stepped in because there was a massive transition. I mean, like we had the worship guy leave, one of the associate pastors leave, all within the 3 months that he had kind of taken a sabbatical. So the church was in a bit of turmoil. So when they picked out me, it was just adding on to the turmoil. And then we did this co-pastor thing that was not helpful. It was a way of playing it safe. They weren't going to take the risk on the 28-year-old, 28-year-old running the church at that point. And, I see a lot of 27, 28-year-olds.
Yeah, we always laugh.
I kind of understand at this point, but it's like,
what the heck?
So yeah, I think that it was a tension. To be honest, I feel like I can say that I feel like the transition only ended like a couple of years ago. To be honest, like it finally is like, okay, we're way past all of that old culture.
Almost everybody that sat under Ike is gone, and it's kind of a new.
No, I would say that when you re-leader, the difficulty is changing the very internal cultures. And that doesn't happen because culture eats the strategies for breakfast. That's the kind of the common statement out there. Well, some of the culture I was able to change because I'm the main teacher. And so the way we taught changed, what we engaged changed. But these internal cultures still have never quite landed to where I think Theressa and I have always wanted it, in the sense of like the relationship cultures and some other stuff, because personality sometimes rules stronger than your cultural desires. And so and my personality was passive. And so I've had to learn to get past some of that, to step up. And so I would say that you're always in leadership. Joshua is he has to handle who Moses was compared to who he was. And after Joshua, there's not going to be a new leader. I think that's the crazy thing. It's like, there wasn't some guy selected and passed on to. And so it just kind of like, it's left up to your houses. I don't know if we could say Joshua did a good job passing it on to the next generation, because you end up with a lot of years in the judges, and it's just a mess.
It's like the worst.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I mean, just having a more of a observer's look at the transition, because we worked very closely in youth group. And then when you came on, I had kind of stepped out of youth group right at the end of your tenure in youth group. And then you became the pastor when I proclaimed you the pastor. And then shortly, we connected again in ministry and did ministry together. And, part of what I see like in the transition is when you were in youth group, I mean, it was fun. It was exciting. There didn't seem like there was a lot of red tape. We just, we make a decision, we just go with it. There wasn't a lot of oversight. And it was almost like this teeny little speedboat that you could just change direction at any time, where when you came to the big church, it's like you're dealing with this cruise ship that, is like, man overboard, okay, we got to turn this thing around, but you're miles out to sea before you get turned around, So it's like you're fighting this, like everything was so quick and so easy.
And I would even put it differently. Originally, Olive Branch was not a cruise ship to turn around. It was 100 little speedboats all trying to drive in their same directions. And you're like, how do you even get and then when you try to corral one of the speedboats, they get mad at you that, no, I don't want to go that way. I'm going that way. And you're like, but we all need to go this way.
It's my ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that was one thing. And I thought, and I think you were in big church already kind of running it, but it was kind of like the idea at the time was every ministry wrote their own mission statement, you know? Yeah. And it was just like, looking back at it, like, that is disaster, you know? There needs to be one vision, one mission statement. How does the ministries fit into that?
I think
support
a really hard thing, too, is that Ike asked Greg to take over, and the elders weren't bought in.
Yeah.
And that was probably the rub of the issue. And so then Greg, you know, decided to go along with kind of allowing them to.
Yeah, no, no.
I mean, in some ways,
I'll own also that I was
wanted it.
scared, and I was like, I don't trust human beings, and I had a very anti-authoritarian strain, and I didn't like, and I had come from Talbot that was like, no, you need to have co-pastorates, and everybody needs to be a pastor, right? This whole concept, and little did I realize that works real well in seminary towns where every guy in your church is a seminary prof, so they could be a pastor, and you're out here going like, who, where, when, how, and so. It was just like my expectations were not measured correctly when I stepped in. And so I had the seminary background, but I did not have the appropriate practical training, and nobody else did either. And I think that was the biggest thing. And so like when I talk about character, I think character is amazing, but competency is a part of leadership. And Joshua showed his competency over and over and over as he had already won some battles. He had already sat there and helped serve with Moses. There had been a training process for Joshua as that was passed on. And so I'm not all for just this kind of like cut new leader. No, you got to have a transition. There's re-leadering needs this shift over where somebody of the old guard or the old leader is walking with the new leader for a time and then graciously walks away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I know, like, I used to manage restaurants, so I'd be a general manager, and then once in a while you got transferred to another store, you know, and to step into that culture, you know, it had some pros and cons, you know. I mean, the pros were if you were following a really well-established, organized manager, you know, where everything just ran like clockwork and everybody was super well trained, and because I'm not detail oriented. So the one thing is the culture that the previous leader set, there's an element that survives, right? As long as you don't destroy it, it survives. So I was always like, okay, good. The organization part is solid here. So I don't have to focus so much on that. I'm going to work on this part of bringing my personality and my culture in and going, everybody's really good at what they do. So I'm going to just inject some fun into this, and, you know, and so the customers are enjoying everything. The employees are, you know, and I always had this attitude of, I want you to work with me, not for me, right? And so it's more of this cooperative, which sometimes bit me in the butt because, you know, I was too nice when I should have put my foot down,
right.
You know, and stuff like that, and let people get away with things a little too long before I stepped in.
That's natural in leadership too, I think. And I mean, even Moses had a hard time calling people out, and you know, so there. I think what it's interesting because you go back to then that part. The next point in the text was the sermon was like, don't lead like the old leader, lead like who God's called you to lead, right? So, and I think it's good to be aware that there are, like for you, you're like, oh man, I'm not really organized, not super organized, but I was given this information from an executive pastor from a pretty large church, and he said it's really interesting when you hire somebody from really large churches, they're really used to doing their very niche specific kind of ministry. And it's kind of like what you're saying. You came in, you're like, everything's organized. This is awesome. And so what happens is when you go into a smaller place and you have to be the one who builds it, you're like, it's way harder because that may not be your leadership gift. Like that, you may not be the builder. You may be I get to add on the panache, you know.
I get to add flavor.
Yeah.
You know?
You add to what's already been created. Some people are just, and so know who you are as a leader. Know what God's called you to. You may be to building. I'm not a church planter. I couldn't do what Ike did. But I'm pretty darn good at this middle section of church life because I've been over it 3 times. So it's like and there's some serious hurdles coming and some serious risks and things we're going to take as the church continues to develop and grow and reaches people. But that's the part that's like, yeah, you learn and you grow and you step out, and sometimes you're builder, sometimes you're the manager, sometimes you're you add the little sauce on top. So it's kind of know who you are. I think it's important.
So as leaders, and I mean, all of us are, leading in some way. How would you define how God made you to lead? What are your leadership traits? If you said, if people were going to say, this is me as a leader, what would that be?
I think that goes to your thoughts about Marcus Buckingham.
I don't know how to answer that question, but I do have a story. We were at a conference for leadership, and Marcus Buckingham, he has an English accent, and he was lovely to listen to.
Lovely English
Aren't they all?
accent.
It was amazing. I literally could listen to him forever, but he shared something about leadership that I thought was fascinating. They were trying to analyze leadership and what are the qualities a leader needs to have, and what makes the leaders the best. And what they discovered was that there wasn't just one way to lead that made you succeed. It was the people that really honed in on their own giftings that allowed their leadership to succeed. It was, if you tried to be somebody else, it would fail. But if you knew who you were, and you if you were really relational and you kind of banked on that, then everybody would love you, and you could make it work, and you could find that organizational person to help you, make sure it's run well. And I thought that really stuck with me. I thought that was really interesting because my brain wants to find the 1, 2, 3s of what's the best. And there are some things that leaders have to do, but there's an aspect to it that's personality.
Yeah. So when I took that test from Marcus Buckingham, the bottom line, mine is a coaching, teaching leadership style. So I want to come in and inform and help you discover how to do the next thing. And so I'm not the builder, you're the relational leadership style, but you're decisive. And so you have this ability to kind of talk to me, relate with me, and then go this is what really needs to be done. And then I have to go, I got to make a decision. And then so I want to go in and coach somebody into the decision. I want to show them all the details and data and points, but that's not always how people want it. And so that's kind of my thing. What did you discover over the years for yourself?
Oh, I mean, every time I've ever taken any tests or anything, and I know this about me too, is I'm not on the visionary invention style.
Right.
I mean, like we've always joked around. If you have
You're on the squash invention.
If you ask me a question and hand me a blank piece of paper, I'm I am lost. I'm just like a deer in the headlights going, I don't even know where to start. But if you start the conversation, I can jump in and contribute, right?
Or squash it.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah. or make a sarcastic comment and
why it's a terrible idea.
But I think that's probably my place is time. I'm better at managing something that's already established and maybe building off of that, but really not veering too far off of that.
Actually, one of your best gifts as a leader is your ability to come up with amazing ideas that were already stated about 5 minutes before.
We were just talking about this. He's redundant. He likes to be redundant.
Yes.
Or repeater.
That is so funny. And that is totally my ADD. And I, just for you guys that don't know, in our staff meetings, forever, somebody we're brainstorming or saying something, and somebody will say something, and then a couple people, and then I will go, oh, wait a minute, what about this? And it was something that somebody said 3 times ago, and everybody laughing, and I'm like, oh, was that already said? But part of that is because I'm in my head, and I'm just,
you're thinking about your next joke.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yes, I totally repeat what other people say and steal their ideas without even knowing it. So yeah, that's my leadership role. Steal, beg, borrow, and steal, and then present it as my own. But yeah, I'm much better at managing things and then just trying to incorporate some fun into it. And that's probably where I probably lean to the most is I want to make sure that people don't feel like I just expect this of you and do it. I want them to know that I appreciate it. I almost never try to pass by volunteers, especially mine, that are under me, without saying thank you. I appreciate you, but also having fun with them, and so to me that's me. I always try to bring the party. So, but some of the other things you said too about leadership that I thought was important and worth talking about too was godly leaders lead from a Christ-like character, not charisma. And then you mentioned too, I'm not putting newbies in leadership roles because their character needs to be tested first. And just kind of talking about that, the charismatic leader and the dangers there, letting people lead before their character is really established.
I think what's been fascinating to me is just doing a cursory examination of all these hyper famous pastors who are super charismatic, and in the last 10, 20 years, it's depressing. It's depressing. It's a graveyard of ministries in a lot of ways. So, I mean, you were saying...
Yeah, like early on in our ministry, I felt like... my personality is such that if I'm not good at something, then I want to quit. That's just the core of Theressa.
That's my leadership skill. Take off and run.
Where's the door? And
if you don't like this, follow me away.
I'm leading. I'm leading the revolt.
Okay, so early on, I felt that very heavily, like, oh my gosh, we're terrible at this. We need to get out of this situation. Like, Greg, what did we get ourselves into? And I remember,
you got to understand, one of my leadership traits is grit.
He's like, I am not giving up. Yeah.
So it works real well in our marriage.
Good. At
least I haven't left you.
Yeah,
you're true. It's working.
That's just because you're not challenging. You're not hard. You're not difficult. You're not challenging. Otherwise,
I don't know about that.
No. Go ahead.
No, so there was a lot. I guess I'd be envious, right? I would be envious of other people's ministries, and I would see these other pastors and their wives, and we would go to conferences, and I'd be like, oh,
and they're telling all their best stories.
They have, the better ministry. They're better at this. They have a great team, and the team actually likes them. And I'm like, just envious, and which is a sin, and I know that. But then one by one, oh, he had an affair, and their marriage is over, and their ministry's over, and he did too, and so while I'm joking about it, it's so depressing and sad, but it taught me also to not be as envious of, because sometimes people get.
Yeah, and one of the things too, when you're looking at some of these super charismatic leaders and stuff, you look at their ministry, and you have this fantasy that this was really easily built too.
You do.
And then a lot of times you hear they're just cutting people down, and it's pretty dog eat dog, on the way to the top. But
and they're that was an instant success, and it's been 10 years of them, 20 years of them grinding away at the small things.
But the thing that amazes me with lack of character, and I mean, granted, don't be prideful going, oh, I'm above that because, less to happen to you. But the thing that troubles me is a lot of times you hear these stories and some of the abuse that's going on behind the scenes and, all of this. And people around them know it, or experienced it, and they don't call them out on it. I don't understand how you can have a pastor that has hit on you and really crossed lines inappropriately
and not tell anybody,
and then not tell anybody, not warn anybody, and and I know that sometimes I think it was Ravi Zacharias, right, where so many people were saying he had such a wonderful ministry going and such a powerful ministry going. I didn't want to ruin the ministry, and to me, I'm thinking, you have no ministry if you don't have integrity, And I'm not trying to defame him as a
No, I heard that from Beth Moore, too. I was surprised because when some stuff went down in the SBC, she kind of started telling some stories, and not about specific people, but about things that had happened to her. And I was, floored that somebody like Beth Moore didn't feel like she could call these men out. I'm still not over that.
There's a very real sense in certain churches, certain zones, be it you got it in the Catholic Church, you got it all the way down, is that we take this idea of don't cast your pearls before swine. like people will use that as like a line of like, well, I'm not supposed to bring the air of the church's dirty laundry. We're supposed to deal with each other's stuff on the inside. This is not, and you are, but that means you need to bring it up to those on the inside. But the problem is,
then there has to be accountability.
There has to be accountability,
right? Yeah. The problem is with a charismatic person, and this is hard with really charismatic people. You almost just want to believe in them and believe what they're doing. It's like, so you don't push back, and when you do push back, they have some of them are narcissistic, and so they have the capacity to cut you out.
They have no shame.
Yeah.
That's what. Sorry,
let's go ahead. That's what
Ben Shapiro was talking about that today, about politicians. I'm sorry, that's not what we're talking about, but that's the connection that I made.
Yeah, there's a lack of shame, an ability to just, if you are ashamed, you never run, you never run for anything. Right. If you have no shame, you run for everything.
Because all your dirty laundry gets aired.
Yeah. And the difficulty for me is that, like, there are some cases that it's not true, and it's exaggerated because there are employment issues inside churches, and then suddenly that's abuse, and it's like, and in some cases it's legitimately abuse, and I think that murkiness gets hard when you're that up close to people and you're that near, especially if they're charismatic. It's like,
so I heard
really
Tim Keller's wife,
this?
Kathy, I think it's Kathy, talking about this. So she was, after Tim passed away, somebody was interviewing her, and I think it had to do kind of with the Ravi conversation. And in that heart, and they were basically saying, like, what do we do? How do we manage churches to where this doesn't happen? And basically she was like, you have to have accountability around the pastor. Like, that has to be something that is intentional and it's managed, and like other people know about it. It's not like just the pastor's responsibility. It's the church's responsibility to make sure that the pastor has accountability and that people actually know him. Not just him, but any of the pastors, any of the leaders, any of the directors. Like, you have to have accountability.
This is why we'll talk about it this Sunday, but followership is so critical, because we don't realize that following is what empowers the leader, and therefore you have a responsibility as the follower to challenge that leadership to stay faithful. Following is not blind following. Following is an active role, and so there's some of that we'll get into this Sunday, but I do think at the same time that's why we need elders over senior pastors. I don't like the role, as much as it can be difficult, because there's always a challenge between vision and direction and volunteers and staff, and there's always going to be that natural just kind of working all that stuff out. But without it, you lose a valuable and vital aspect. You don't just want people who are in elder positions who aren't asking hard questions, who aren't checking in on the spiritual.
Well, I just think it's
life.
harder than we give it weight. I think that it's hard to be honest with people. We've had this conversation in the past when we were talking about relationships and communication, and it's just hard to say it. And I think, like with Greg, he's always been, I think, open to hearing criticism, right? And that's one of my favorite things about him, is that he does receive what people say. And recently we had an elder tell him something that he needed to work on. And to be honest, like, it made me feel so comfortable. I was like, oh, good. Finally.
I didn't respond super well.
He didn't respond well, but I, in the background, am like so thankful that somebody's bold enough and strong enough to say, hey, you can't do this.
But guess what? I'm working on it.
And he's working on it. And I knew he would be,
Okay.
Anyways.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. I mean, it's not like, every time you see a pastor struggling with something, we got to expose,
That's the other danger.
The thing. If they are struggling with it, they're fighting against it, they're bringing accountability into their life, and you see a repentant heart, then that's normal. You're never going to find a man
who's perfect. Yeah, and perfect. It's not that everybody in the church gets to critique him. It's that he needs to have that accountability close, where people actually do know who he is and how he is, and that they can bring things to him that he's willing to change and grow.
Again, the bottom line is, like, my last point was, no matter who leads, the real leader is always Jesus. So it's this, like, you need to always go, who's the leader above the leader? That's who you're ultimately called to follow, and therefore we're all accountable as brothers and sisters to the ultimate leader. And so there is the right to challenge. There's a right to call out pastors. There's a right to call popes out, and this kind of, we need to. We're brothers. God is the only God. He's the only untouchable in this relationship. So, and I think if pastors would start there, and most do, most are honest, good men. They're willing to admit that, like, that they're not perfect. But you don't also want to end up in a world where like everything has to be perfect, and you got to. It's like that's also dangerous.
It's very critical.
And the other piece is that you don't want to throw somebody out because it looks difficult. I did mention this on purpose because we can assume that, oh my gosh, leaders, they're just a leader just they do it so easily, and that leads to fakeness. It leads to bad decision making. It leads to bullying. It leads to all kinds of stuff because you think, oh, leadership's supposed to be easy. Well, I make decisions fast. I'm a good leader. No, leadership's always arduous. It's difficult. It's guiding people together. It's trying to be clear. And guess what? Being clear is not easy. Always your clarity is not it takes a lot of work to be clear. And a lot of time you get sick of trying to be clear because you thought you were and then you're not. And you're like, I must not be a good leader. No, it's just this is how God shapes character in people. Keep working at it. Keep going. Don't quit because it's not, leadership isn't easy, even for gifted leaders. And how do you know you're a gifted leader? You're a leader. You've been given the gift of leader. You're leading. So guess what? Lead well. It's not going to be easy.
Now, one quick question too. Don't put newbies in a leadership role. That their character needs to be tested first. And so you also, you want to give people responsibility, bite-sized responsibility, see how they do with it, maybe give them a role to lead in a small way, see how they lead people. Because if you're not leading people, then you're just out on a walk, right? If people aren't following you, you're just out on a walk. But
I love walks.
Yeah, I know. But so like number one, you stepped into for lack of a better word, the senior pastorship when you were 28 years old. Would you have considered yourself a newbie? And this is going to be a double fault, so don't answer too quickly. And if you don't, then why not? And if you did, why? But also, a couple of episodes ago when we were talking about marriage and stuff like that and you were talking about you guys were asked to counsel a couple, do premarital counseling, and you guys were pretty brand new married, and you're like
3 years in,
So what did you think of that? Like, from being handed something in a leadership role that you considered yourself newbies at?
So two things there. First, I wasn't a newbie as a Christian, so I think that's the critical point.
How long were you a Christian?
Oh gosh,
10
a
years?
real Christian.
10 years.
probably 10 years.
Yeah.
When did you stop being a newbie?
So when you're maturing in your faith, like you know how to read the Word, you're in prayer, like you have a devoted relationship with Christ, you understand what you believe and why you believe it. I think that or some of those established aspects. Was I a newbie in leadership? Yes, everyone's a newbie in leadership when they start. I don't think anybody gets is just boom, I know everything there is. They're either going to be a newbie and get mentorship, or they're going to be a newbie and get beat up and learn from the beat up and quit.
And you did have steps.
You chose number two.
You were leading youth group, and then it was it wasn't like just come out of college and not lead anything.
And he led well in youth.
Yeah,
and he was a strong leader.
And the second thing is that you don't lead away from the Word of God. So especially that was the thing. Like I didn't want to just say what I thought. I wasn't going to come up with my thinking. I wasn't going to speak out. So we stayed really close to the text. We stayed really close to things, and that's kind of where we went. We angsted over when we were asked.
Yeah, we actually told them, like, we mentioned a bunch of other couples. We were like, no, we're too early married. Like, you should. And their thing was like, no, you have a rad marriage. Like, we want to. And so what we did was we banked on the books. We read a ton of books. It was the Browns.
It was the Browns?
Bree and Nate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we just banked on books. And so him and I like to read. We like to learn. So we just read a ton of books.
Yeah.
And it was super fun. I'm sure that we could have done better with them. But, like, it was something that ignited in us. Like, we love relationships. And we love kind of figuring all this out. And one of the things we love to do is analyze people. And
yeah,
so it was fun.
Yeah, one of the big pieces for us is we both agree with this is because we did it at that 3-year mark, we were rehearsing what healthy marriages do so much. It just built it into the DNA of our marriage.
And I know for me, when I first became a Christian, and it was as a senior in high school, and I was just on fire for God when I gave my life to the Lord. I had no relationship with God really, and then I was just immersed, and I was so in love with God. Bible study, reading the Word, studying the Word, praying, and just so excited. And then joined this heavy metal Christian band, and we called ourselves heavy metal ministers because we were going to change the world and evangelize everybody. And I mean, we did Bible studies all the time. We were witnessing to people all the time, bringing people to Christ all the time. And I was just like, at that point, 19 and 20, just on fire, going, I want to do ministry. I want to do ministry full time, And I don't have to be the pastor of a church, like preaching every Sunday, but I want to be a minister. That's what I want to do. And that was my goal. And then trying to settle on a career and, doing Nancy working retail in the day, I'm working restaurants at night and raising kids, and life just got in the way, and we really fell away from the Lord. And I thought, when I think of that aspect of, don't hand it to newbies, I would have destroyed whatever ministry I was involved in because I was so immature spiritually, even though I was excited, and I was so immature as a person, and my character was not, truly established yet.
That's the scary thing about like CCM artists who are young and this kind of, when they would, all these guys have, another area, there were tons of Christians that burned and flamed out and destroyed things. Because honestly, they were given
CCMR being Christian
music ministries, the music stuff is like, because I just think that we got into this worldly idea that, the youth are we were just listening to a podcast on this, and you should learn from the youth. This is not a biblical concept. That's a Rousseauian concept. You're supposed to listen to the elders, the older.
Actually, the students are the teachers as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And so I think we do that even with our music. Like, let the young are supposed to teach us from their music because they got the passion. I'm not saying that that's not a great place. If you are young and you want to be a leader, you want to change the world, hitch your wagon to an older leader and let them mentor you like crazy.
And I think Greg would admit that like one of the things that he did wrong was that he didn't pull in mentors early enough or listen to them when they gave him advice.
Because it was the advice they were giving me was heavy and scary. And there was big risks involved, and so which leads us to risks.
Yeah. Well, first, before we get into risk, I just want to point out like one of those biggest confirmation moments for me when it comes to leadership, right? When I just know I'm nailing this, right? Is my youngest daughter, Corinne, she's 40 years old, right? 2 weeks ago when you were talking about leadership, and she's sitting next to me in church, and you were talking about people in the office, secretaries and whatnot, talking to themselves out loud, and you're like, who are you talking to? No, just talking to myself. And you're like, how many people out there talk to themselves verbally, on a regular basis? Raise your hand. And Corinne, my daughter, raised her hand that she talks to herself all the time. And then she leaned over in my ear and went, sometimes I just need an expert opinion. And I went, if nothing else ever happens, I know that I have fulfilled my leadership role by raising her right.
Instilling a deep level of comedy into the family.
Yeah. So awesome. That we went from leadership, we went to risk, and so that was this sermon. The third one in this series is called "Take the Risk." And in God is the only place you will truly find safety. I loved what you were saying about the Bible doesn't call us to safety, it calls us to risk. And so one of the things I was thinking about that too is, God's, almost like God's purpose is for us to get out there and take risk. And I was like, okay, but that's post-fall, right? I mean, we weren't like creating God's like, go out and take risk, because we were in the garden. Everything was in its rightful place. And I would almost feel like there really was no risk other than eating of the tree, right? Everything was permissible. There was no risk. There was no harm that could come to you necessarily. And it wasn't until the fall, when death and evil and everything was introduced, that now we live opposed to culture, opposed to creation in a sense. And so there's risk.
I think that's just there was risk in the garden, just as there's a risk for a child, like in our video, to jump into his dad's arms. Now, well, what's the risk? That he was going to be dropped? He's never going to be dropped. He's not going to be, and so I think risk originally was teaching us how to trust God deeper. Now the risk is, yes, it's the same, but the cost is different. Because and so when you take risks prior to that, you're taking risks like crazy risks where you don't have any guarantee something good's happening. Yeah, that's why I was like, but now as Christians, we have the and then what kind of reality. Okay, so and then what? And God catches you. Oh, no matter what happens in the risk, well, then God catches you. Ultimately, in the end, God catches you. You resurrect from the dead. You walk with the Lord for the rest of your life. It's that. So we've returned to the risk-taking the garden gives. It's just the consequences look really, really dire and really dangerous. But even in the early garden, I would say that even in eternity, when we're standing in the new heavens and earth, it's going to be a risk to like, tell people your story. Not that you're scared you're going to be rejected or whatever, but it's like, I'm going to put it out there. It's like, I'm going to trust the Lord with this. I think trust and risk are just kind of the mirror coins in that sense. I could be wrong, but you could be right. So,
so one of the things you mentioned was, the opposition of risk is comfort. And we look at risk as being dangerous, but also comfort is dangerous, right? Because we become complacent. It prevents growth. Anytime you refuse to take risk, you're refusing to grow as a person.
I'm pretty comfortable. I've grown a lot.
Yeah, I know, me too. But so comfort is dangerous because it does prevent growth and it creates this fear that the consequences become too dire, right? So in a sense, we need to get comfortable with not being comfortable.
Right. There you go.
So, and one of the things when you said that comfort is the dangerous thing, risk is the godly thing, risk and courage. It made me think of like, yeah, there's truth to that, because if God wasn't like, take risk, then we wouldn't have been warned to put on our suit of armor. Because I will tell you this, put on your full suit of armor. That's not for comfort, right? I mean, I don't care if you have a numbered bed, and lay in there in a suit of armor. You're not going to get a good night's sleep, I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess your love handles will be pinched when you roll over.
Ouch.
That's what I'm guessing. So what say you?
Maybe you need a bigger suit.
A more comfortable suit.
Yeah.
No, it's clearly we are sent out as sheep amongst wolves. That's what Jesus said. So there is a definite danger, and I think risk taking. I'm from the outside, coming into the church. I knew a lot of people would take crazy risks because they would smoke drugs, they would do all these things, and it's like, and you come to churches, it's almost like because we think all risk taking is evil. Like Christians don't take risks. Now, when you were younger, I felt like we took different risks. Like get out there and talk to that guy, go cold turkey evangelizing, and try to start that ministry, and go. We can solve the homelessness. And then you kind of take these risks. You get beat up a bit, and you're like, I've been there. I tried that. It's not worth the risk anymore. That's sad because I think that God's like, no, it's still worth the risk. So get out there, keep trying, keep growing, keep going. Don't do it alone. Do it with others, as we'll talk about this week. But I do wonder, because I do think that the longer you stay a Christian, the less risk-taking I see people take. Have you noticed that? I mean, I don't know if this is an age thing.
There's like a fire in the beginning.
Yeah. It's like, man, you're out there, because even babies take more risks than we do, right? They're willing to get up and fall down. They're willing to bang their heads.
Well, I'll tell you, falling down hurts a lot more than it used to. So,
you're taking those risks every day, Brent, getting up out of bed.
I am. And my body warns me. It's popping. It's yelling at me. Don't get up. But one of the things you said, too, and I think when I was thinking through this, but you just brought it up, too, is when we were younger men, we took a lot more risks, right? And that's usually in your younger years when you kind of have more of a rebellious spirit. And I don't mean, rebellious as sinful, but just this rebellious spirit. I'm going to get on my motorcycles. I'm going to take chances. I'm going to go skiing. I'm going to go skydiving. I'm going to do these wild things. Then you get married, you settle in, you have kids, you have a mortgage, and you're thinking, all right, I got to pull away the childish things and start adulting. And then your life kind of settles into a more boring routine. And so I do think that's where the comfort starts seeping in, right? And kind of like you mentioned, even in the sermon, where when you're a young church plant, you're willing to take risks. You're willing to go do this. And a lot of times you don't have a lot of overhead or a lot of things to be concerned over from a ministry standpoint. You're just out there doing it. And then all of a sudden you become an established church and you got bills to pay and you got people under your flock that you need to tend to, and and now all of a sudden you start becoming that adult, in the room, and stop taking risks, because we can't afford for this to be a bad decision and then the church have to suffer financially, or
right. And what I've seen is the churches that are willing to ignore that feeling, they do build the structures, but they're willing to put it all out there. Like, I think one of the guys I used to hang out with, he put it this way, because financially, always speaking, he's like, every year it looked like our church wasn't going to exist. They're one of the largest churches in Southern California in the world now, and there is a tendency to realize that if Jesus went to the cross and died to bring resurrection, churches are not supposed to be robustly alive in the sense of without risking the death of it to reach people. It's dumb to risk the death of the church to dig wells in Africa. That's not our mission. To go, yes, you can dig wells in Africa. Yes, you can do these things. But the goal is, if somebody's thirsty and dying, do you give them a cup of water, or do you tell them about Christ? If you don't have a cup of water, you tell them about Christ. Why would I give them a cup of water? Well, because I want to tell them about Christ. That's the point.
Well, and I think it's the dependency part, right? So the new church plants or the new believer is fully aware of their dependence on God, right? But then as you become more self-dependent, you're slipping away from that calling.
Yep.
And you're not taking the right risks because you're not remembering what you're there for.
And look, and it's not like because you take the risk, it's going to win. 9 out of 10 church plants fail. It's not like the churches that exist. You can fail your church into destruction and bankruptcy.
I don't think that risk means risky, like in sense of you think of risky business. You think about being
life or death,
stupid or not. You can be risky. You can you can take risks in the sense of spiritually speaking, where you're having to put it all on the line for the Lord and say, all right, Lord, I think you're calling me to this. So I'm going to step out in faith, and he's going to have to come in and make it happen. Right. Because it's not humanly possible. So I don't think it's risky. We need to throw ourselves off buildings to prove that we love God.
That was the challenge Satan gave to Jesus. Throw yourself off. Prove that God's got you. And it's Jesus wait, no.
What's the point?
This is all about shortcuts.
Right. Yeah. And that's the danger, right? And when you want to do the shortcut version, it's that violates so much of the Proverbs. Larry Osborne would constantly tell us, it's dumb to baptize your idea and say God's called you to take this risk. You don't take the risk if God isn't clearly God has called you to take this risk. When God has clearly called you, you are dumb not to take the risk. So it's for example, we have this property down in Temescal Valley. Eventually, we're going to have to be praying like crazy and
take
go,
a risk.
Is this the time? We got to take a risk, or it's just going to sit there. And and I don't believe God. And I've had to take several risks where we haven't sold it because I believe God wants to do something down there. I actually know God wants to do something down there. There needs to have something happen down there. And that time is getting closer and closer and closer. And so we have to get a little bit comfortable with risk taking, because guess what? That can be a risk. And it's not a dumb risk sometimes. Sometimes it's the way that we have to put it in there to get going. Sometimes God shows up and says, you don't need to take it because you're willing to go there. I'm gonna pay for it.
And I think we've been talking a lot about the church being risky, but then also living in risk. But I think that individuals as Christians are called to take the risk, talk to that person, talk to your friend about that sin, or tell that person about Jesus. I don't know. I feel like when the collective whole of the church is living like that, right, then the entirety of it is going to be
It's
more
back
that.
when we talked about, if you're not willing to tell your friend that he's got something in his teeth or a booger in his nose, you're not going to tell him that you got this. If you're not willing to take small risks in which you're challenging, or take a small risk in which, you're actually going to hand that invitation to your waitress, or, hey, you're not actually going to share your faith with your person on your phone, that person on your phone. These are small risks. Then how are we really going to take the big ones?
Yeah, and I like the idea that risk versus comfort. comfort takes you out of the game. You know, and it's just a good reminder in 1 Thessalonians where, you know, talking about comfort and, you know, the people cry out for peace and safety while destruction will come upon them suddenly, you know. And I will say that, you know, like you said, I think sometimes as Christians we fall into the safety mode of not being risky and being safe and protecting our children and putting a bubble over them. And I mean, there was a generation, you know, like the generation behind me where so many of those kids, the parents put this bubble over them and tried to protect them, and you know, and then they grew up and walked away from the faith, a lot of them, and we cry out safety and peace, and then destruction falls, you know. Be risky, be risk takers, and do it in a godly manner with character and lead them right.
I feel like we'll be remiss if we don't mention our missionaries. And, you know, I remember being close with Teen when she was in Africa. And I think it was, what was the...
Cameroon?
Yeah, but what was the terrorist group? Boko Haram was kidnapping young girls. And basically the elders chose to pull her out. But I remember
nearby. Yeah, there was
that was really hard because she didn't want to necessarily be pulled. Anyways, I'm telling her story. I don't mean to, but... just the idea of like, okay, there's this thing of like, okay, I'm taking a risk. And then when do you say, okay, this risk isn't what God's called me to necessarily?
Yeah. When do you, I think again, there's a counsel of wisdom that goes on. Jesus says that when they persecuted you, pack up and leave and go to the next town.
Okay. So we're supposed to leave California?
No, we're not being killed for it.
Okay.
We're not like, you'll notice
Aren't we though? No.
There's a pattern going on in the book of Acts. Yeah, that when they start to kill them, they leave, they move out. Some people stay, like some of the apostles stuck around and they continued to work with those who were there. But the evangelists move on. And so there is
Well, I'm not an evangelist. So does that mean I don't get to leave?
So I think it's like we talk about California as a place to reach. And it's because I think it's just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean you're going through persecution. No, I need to make this clear. It's like, it's not persecution. We're not going through persecution. It's uncomfortable, but that's the point. Is like, if you're running to comfort, you might be running to the wrong message.
Yeah.
I think the enemy wants you to be comfortable, and so that you'll end up internally uncomfortable. And if you're willing to be uncomfortable, you'll be eternally comfortable. I mean, that's kind of the inverse situation. And yeah, comfort creates ineffectiveness in the church. Just look at the Church of Laodicea, and you see it writ large.
All right, we got a couple of questions, and I think we can hit them pretty quickly if we hurry. So Craig Tranning sent in a couple of questions. One of them was, when you were talking about leadership, how do you balance the call of leadership with the reality of living with those you're called to lead, especially when it feels like the things you're supposed to say to them could hurt them far more than they may be able to handle? So what say you?
Yeah, that's not an easy, that's the nature of leadership. A lot of times you have to call people to things that is ultimately going to harm them. But the way you do that is really approaching it from we are all in this together, right? You know, and gain first trust and commitment to the ultimate value, ideal, or vision.
Getting people to work with you and not for you.
Right. And then it's a coaching them up into that. Then as you go through that, and if they can't realize that if they're not realizing what needs to change, it's when you have to draw the hard line at that point. And Henry Cloud has his book Necessary Endings, and he would argue that that's when you say, hey, this is what I need you to be, and if you can't do that, then you need to decide whether you can keep this position. So you give them the choice at that point.
Okay, now that's good if you're leading at work and you're the boss.
Yeah,
right?
What if it's family?
What if it's, your relationship with your spouse? Okay, this is what I need you to do. If you can't fulfill that, you're fired.
This is where boundaries come in, right? So it's like, these are boundaries.
Laugh with us.
I'm sorry.
Stop being so serious.
I'm tired. But it is serious. Like, I don't think people know how to draw those boundaries rightly. I think that I watch a lot of people either just like this or nothing. And it's like, no, boundary gate, right? The gate is, I want a relationship with you. Here's how you open the gate. The boundary is you can't have a relationship with me that way. And so there is that sense of like, and Necessary Endings was written for family relationships and work relationships. And so he would say like, hey, I need you to not speak to me like this, or this consequence will happen. And so it's up to you. If you want, you have the choice. It's in your power to choose how you're going to speak to me. I can't make you. You're actually literally empowering the other person. And so you need to say hard things to people sometimes, but you want to give them the power to change, and you can't change them. I think we go wrong when we try to make someone change instead of empowering them to that change, giving them what they need to change, giving them the helps to change, calling them to that change, those kinds of things.
And give them the freedom to not change, but understanding if you don't change, there's consequences, and here's what they are.
And then
and so
the last point is, as a leader, you always have the right to say, I'm not going to ask for this change, and I will go to the pace of that. And so there's some points where you can't, that I do believe that you can you have to go to the pace of the slowest person in your team, like there's, or in a setting. And what I mean by that is like, sometimes some people are thinking slower. Some people are slower to decision making. Some people are just slower at their work, and you can ask them to improve. And maybe you're like, it's just not worth the cost of letting that person go or having that argument or whatever. Then you're just making the choice yourself to go at that pace. And that's okay. That's okay. That's a choice that we have as leaders. We don't all have to go.
You don't have to do that, but you can choose
to do that. Right.
And part of that too is when you get to that point that you don't agree, right? You're especially when it feels like things you're supposed to say to them could hurt them more than they're able to handle. I mean, part of that is good communication in the sense that you frame it in a way that they can handle it, you know? And a lot of that's going to deal with how much tension there is in the relationship. Kind of like one thing that I've always appreciated about your teaching style from youth group on is the fact that you take these very deep ideas and you put them on the bottom shelf so people can understand them. And it's like, oh, I get it now. So, part of that is that's that communication skill of helping people understand and understanding too, when the sense that I'm not calling you bad. I am just saying this behavior or this thought process. Let's talk about it. And then engage in conversations and making sure they're not one-sided conversations, that you're both trying to really understand and get deeper in it.
I've found that there are so many things in our relationships that a lot of people assume that the other person isn't capable of handling. And it's really, and I don't know the situation, so I don't know if this applies, but I've seen this a lot in life, that so many people constantly assume what somebody else can handle, and then nobody's willing to be honest with them and really call them out. So like, we're kind of stealing an opportunity for them to have that opportunity to grow. And I don't know if it's maybe that you've already encountered something in them that you know that they're not capable of responding well. But there's been so many conversations where I'm trying to convince people to go to that person and talk to them. And we're just so scared of their response.
Yeah. And give a little formula, then you could talk to this, Theressa, because we've had to do this with our kids. There's been conversations that we felt like, oh my gosh, they're not going to handle this well.
Yeah.
And so what we did is we went to them and said, hey, we're going to have a conversation. And like, we just need you to know that it's going to be hard to hear. And we don't know if you can handle this right now, but
and our goal isn't to hurt you. We love you.
And every time we've framed it in those ways, they
take it better.
They've taken it better.
And a lot of times it's like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I do feel like if it's a work-related issue where you're the boss and you have to have a hard conversation, I feel like in one sense those are easier. And I mean, hard conversations are never easier, but it's easier. I'm your boss. This is what's expected. Can you do this? And a lot of times when you have those hard conversations,
unless it's a volunteer, right? Then it's way different.
Well, it's the same, but it's different. You don't have the carrot of a paycheck to get them, but it's hard, but it's different. And the idea too is you might think, wow, this is a difficult conversation. I got to call them out on this. Most of the time, you're not telling them something they're totally oblivious to. So they may be defensive about it, but it doesn't mean they don't agree with you or they don't see it in themselves. And again, when it comes to family or relationships or friendships in that regard, I verbally prepare them for this, that this might be a difficult, but also sometimes writing them a letter or something, stating just so that they can prepare it and process it before you have the conversation too, because a lot of times it doesn't go well when you go, let's talk now, and
yeah, that's not
and they're
good.
not prepared.
Although my mom taught me never to put anything in writing.
She a lawyer? All right, really quick, let's go off to the next one. How do you know what God is calling it? How do you know what God's calling is? I believe I'm being told that I'm not currently fulfilling my full calling and that I'm supposed to do something different or more, but I am having a hard time discerning what exactly that is. So people are telling you you're not fulfilling your calling. My first question would be, do you feel that too?
Yeah, it sounds like he feels like he or she feels like she is not fulfilling their calling, and that God may be calling them to something deeper. I would say, first of all, ensuring that your calling is still clear from what it originally was. So I would say that all Christians are called to make disciples of all the nations. And that's so I would consider that the top line. And then you can do anything that fits in that category, making disciples who make disciples. The second part is loving the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. So that kind of limits it. So don't sin. Your calling can't be a sinful calling. So in those zones, you got a lot of zone to go either direction. And then it's like, well, is this fitting your personality? So like now it's a little bit more about, do you know yourself well enough? Do you understand how you lead? Do you understand your capacities, your abilities, your strengths? And then the last thing, now you're getting into passions, drives. We're actually going to do a whole series on this coming up in, I think, January on calling. But really this last portion is just like, what makes you pound the table? What gets you excited? What gets you energized? What do you stay awake thinking about and get like, you can't stop. You want to do it. It's pressing you. And then work to get that clarity and work with other people then as well. So scripturally, or is it fitting with scripture, right? Those two. Then what other people say, does that fit who you are? Then take steps. And if the door's open, step through the doors. If the door's closed, keep praying about it. Keep seeking. Is this the right time? Is it something I can do in my calling I'm in currently? Or is it something new? That's kind of what I would do in those cases.
Yeah, and I might be repeating you because I tuned out for a second, but the idea that if you don't know exactly what that calling is, take steps in the direction of where you think that might be, because to just go from point A to point Z, you may be missing a lot of on-ramps and off-ramps.
I really think that's what God means by ask, seek, and knock. So you're asking in prayer, you're asking to open the door, you're seeking it, you're actively engaging for God to give you the answer. And then when it comes, are you willing to knock on that door and let that opportunity open to you? And I do think people go through the asking process, but they fail to go to the seeking process. Like, I'm asking for a job, God, and they're just waiting for the life preserver to be thrown to them. Or instead of getting out there looking for a job. And guess what? God will bring you a job. And then when you get that opportunity, you're like, but is this really the job? Knock on the door.
Yeah.
Expect God's answering.
Yeah. And so again, I don't know if I repeated it like I do in the staff meetings, but I realize why I do that. Because when I'm thinking, I talk to myself verbally in my head. I don't do it out loud.
Because you want an expert opinion.
I do, yeah, I know. But I have a conversation in my head and I'm thinking through. Just like if I'm reading, I read in my head, word for word. I don't, and so again, like I'm not like tuned out like, oh, that was boring, I'm zoning out. It's like I'm thinking about what I'm going to say and I'm hearing myself, not hearing what other people say.
You already told us this.
There
I'm
you
just
go.
kidding.
And then the last thing was I got a text this morning from George Bell, and this really wasn't a question.
Hey,
but we can throw it out there for discussion if you want to, really briefly. But I thought it was more of a statement, and it was a humorous statement. And he said this. He said, "Why do we find it so difficult to believe that the God Almighty listens to each of us praying at the same time, but are also convinced that Siri and Alexa are?" Yeah. God, it's so difficult to think that he would listen to everybody at the same time. But Siri and Alexa do,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's a good point. That's a great analogy.
It is.
I love it.
It really helps us to kind of overcome some of those old, like, how could God possibly do this? Well,
Maybe he has the ultimate Alexa. I'm just kidding.
Maybe Siri and Alexa.
It's called his
Maybe
mind.
That's what I've
Siri and
renamed.
Alexa are the Antichrist and the beast, and they're mimicking God, but they're limited in his capacity.
Yeah.
So there you go. If you're talking to Alexa,
Did you just
know
bring up the
this.
end times? All right. So
No,
Yes, he did.
know this. You are cooperating with the Antichrist. and,
well,
and if this gets picked up by AI, I know AI is the Antichrist, and it's going to attack me. And I will continue to have technological problems my entire life.
Okay, on
Okay.
that note.
Maybe I went down a rabbit hole. But
Well.
thank you, Theressa, for always laughing at my jokes. You get me. I get you. I appreciate and love you so much.
I think with that, we're just going to invite you to send in any of your responses to,
To
Rabbit
Brent.
Trail. Oh yeah, B branch. Brent's. No, that's a okay. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for joining us with that ending, and we're going to close it up with that. So
Yes, don't forget to go to ChatGPT and go, are you the Antichrist? All right.
God bless you guys. You heard where to send it earlier, so I won't make you do that again. So, but otherwise, God bless you. Have a great rest of your week. We will talk to you later.
Chakalaka.